Lovely people, a pleasant evening or afternoon. It's not evening yet. They say when it is 6, it's evening. But a pleasant afternoon to everybody. I was listening to a live for a moment. I couldn't join somebody that I know. And I thought about something, and then I came across a video of a woman saying that men take zero accountability. You do have women who don't take accountability, so it's really a human problem. But it's not so much the accountability that I'm going to be talking about. It is also not just the accountability, but one of the problems she mentioned is that men pretend. They can pretend long. Women can pretend too, and do a great job at it. But men may, I think, master it. And I'm going to tell you why. This is not a gender war. It is just reality. The only emotion that a man is allowed to emit, and I use the word allowed loosely for you to get the point, is anger, meaning he won't necessarily be labeled a homosexual. He won't necessarily be labeled non-human, if you understand what I mean. It almost comes with the territory because of his testosterone, because of his masculinity. It is expected that he would be an aggressive being, the more aggressive of the two than women. So the emotion of anger is accepted, and as a matter of fact, in situations where it is cause for protection, for security, the anger may be very much necessary if he's protecting his wife, his girlfriend, his fiance, his children, his parents, his family member, or his friends. His aggression may be acceptable in society. Unfortunately, men have taught subliminally and directly to pretend, meaning they were not allowed to express the other areas of their emotions. Only anger they may have been allowed. Because a man, yes, a man, that's all right. To make him go on. He's able to express the area of anger and aggression, but not subtleties, not being vulnerable. Even as it relates to sex, he can have sex with a multiplicity of women, for example. But in terms of being romantic, you find that there is a split. So sexually, he can express himself in terms of his sexual prowess if he's good in performing in bed when the penis hits the vagina. But in terms of, let me send her little romantic letters and become Romeo for a moment, it becomes awkward to him. It becomes sissy in some cases, ridiculous. He doesn't want to be laughed at or mocked by his friends, his male friends, for example, or males, or some women. So he's not allowed to be vulnerable in that sense. His vulnerability cannot be shown if he wants to cry because, life is just really difficult. He may be allowed to cry if his mother should die, God forbid, his father should die, a great friend of his child, his wife, girlfriend, whomever, somebody very close, because it is death. So he may be allowed to cry for the moment, but that crying probably cannot even go on and on and on. Because he's going to be looked upon as quirky or weird. Why is he carrying the cries so long? A woman would be allowed to. So what has happened is that the world have suffocated him being him. The world has strangled his emotions and not allow him to express the full gamut of his emotions. And so what has happened is that now in his bloodline, systemic, he has been trained to pretend. I cannot show that I'm vulnerable. I cannot show that I love. I can't show that I want to get excited, because if I do this, I'm going to be labeled a homosexual, for example. I'm calling it as how some people think. So women, when you find men get into relationships and pretend that they want this woman or they pretend that they're happy in the relationship, it is because they have been taught this from a very young age. Don't express really and truly how you feel. Do not express what you want. Even women are told that. Don't show the man that you care and love him, because it makes you look cheap. It makes you seem as if you're chasing after the man. You know, it makes you seem as if something is absolutely wrong with you. It makes you seem as if you're desperate and life, you know, men are just, you know, you won't get another man. It just makes you look inferior. So even women, to an extent, has, you know, they have been taught to pretend. You know, we're not taught to say to the man, I love you. I really love you and I don't want you to leave. I know my attitude is off. I know it is not good. You know, forgive me. I've been broken. I've not been trained well. I've gone through trauma and didn't seek help. And it takes time to break bad habits and bad practices, because it is in the bloodline. It is systemic. It is like somebody who has an issue. If you have a broken hand and a broken foot, tomorrow morning you're not going to be healed unless there is a miracle from heaven. Outside of that, you have to wait a while before your bones come back together, the muscles come back together, the tissue come back together. And you hope that it doesn't grow crooked. So you have to stay in a certain path and follow the regime. Similarly, for the narcissistic, arrogant man, the man who was only allowed to show aggression, he doesn't know how to show and express the other emotions. So he was taught to pretend from a very tender age, even more than the women. Women were allowed to express all of their emotions. All of their emotions, you know, they're allowed. If the man hurts them, if an ant bites them, you know, something didn't work out, they can cry, they talk about it to their girlfriends and their guy friends. But the men are shafted if they even attempt to do this. Now, when the tree is old, you're telling the men, because you now see ramifications, you now see consequences of teaching them bad principles, bad teachings. You're telling them, men, express yourselves. When for many, many years, the last 10, 20, the house was built, and it's going to take a bulldozer, something gigantic, to pull down all of that and rebuild the foundation yet again. And that takes time. And that is why I've often said, even if people are narcissistic, don't write them off. Luke 1:37 says, but with God nothing is or ever impossible. Jeremiah 32:27 says, is there anything too hard for God? It really wasn't asking a question. In the Old English, in the etymology, it is saying there is nothing hard or too hard for God to do. So no matter how somebody, you know, I know not a number of psychologists and so on will say the narcissist cannot change. No, I beg to disagree, because I'm looking at it from a more spiritual perspective. And there are people who, you know, they have not spoken to the 8 billion people in the world. And there are many men and women who can come out and say, I used to be this way. And it's not about behavior modification. It is about transformation. I am now different because I renew my mind every day on the Word of God. And now he's rebuilding a stronger, more formidable house. Not a Jericho house that they walk around 7 times and when they shout on the 7th time, it pulls down. Men have been taught to pretend from a tender age, unfortunately, ladies. So we need to pray for our men. They have only been taught to be aggressive, and women, stop accusing them of being on the other side. They're gay because they're aggressive towards women. It means they don't like women. Maybe the misogyny may not be from a sexual perspective, but it could be because of trauma, having an overbearing mother, seeing a father abuse the mother. But it doesn't mean that they're on that side. We need to stop that. It is not necessarily true in most cases. The World Health Organization about 2 or 3 years ago had given the census, I call it, and it said 3% of it fell under the that group there. 3%. Let us say they didn't get everybody. Even if you put up to 5 or 6 of the world. So we need to pray for our men, because they have been taught from a tender age to pretend. Women too, but not as heavy as the men. All right, guys, I hope this helped you. You know what to do. Subscribe to my YouTube and my TikTok. Come on, man. Give me one of those lions. Please, pretty please.